It's time for the Your Personal Bank Show with Ference Toth, financial literacy educator and speaker, entrepreneur, and chairman of the board of A Bank Information. Take charge of your financial future with Your Personal Bank. Now here's Ference Toth.
Welcome to the Your Personal Bank Show. Today I want to talk about something I feel is very important for all of us in our country and us as individuals. Of course, you know, we basically, most of us, not all, but many people celebrated, or maybe celebrating, we'll say, the 4th of July, Independence Day. There are people out there that are not a big fan of it anymore, or weren't, maybe never. Don't think it's something worth celebrating. You know, I guess what I'm trying to say about that is I'm saddened. I am saddened by that. I'll say that. I served our country. I was served in the U.S. Army. I was in the Old Guard. I was stationed in Washington, D.C., actually Fort Myer, Virginia, which is right across the river from D.C. I participated in, the ceremonial stuff, right? The spit and polish, as they call it, for visiting dignitaries at the White House and, all over the country, actually. We traveled quite a lot, which for a young guy right out of high school in the Midwest, that was an exciting thing for me. It was I was getting a chance to see the world. But the thing is, it was exciting to me. I felt like I was doing my part. For a while, I'll say this much. For a while, I didn't feel like I was doing my part as much as, say, a combat soldier was in terms of, on the front line, protecting our freedom and doing the duty for the country. And I did. I felt like, they were more deserving. They were more, than I was, because yes, I was in the Army. I did my part. I was a musician. I did the arrival ceremonies, things like that, and met a number of dignitaries, presidents of the world. Okay, and it was a veteran, a combat veteran of 3 tours of duty, Vietnam, and I know he'd won the Purple Heart among other things. Had been injured in combat, things like this. And I remember one day we were talking, and he said, something. I said something, and I said, yeah, I served in the Army. Served in the Army also, and he started asking me some questions. Found out I was in the Old Guard. He thought that was really cool, and started some more asked me some more questions about it and things like that. And I kind of jokingly, I used to say, well, I wasn't in the real Army. I was, we were spit and polish, and he looked at me. He says, "Don't you ever say that? Don't you ever say that again." I kind of took me aback a little bit. I looked at him. He says, "Look, you served, right?" I said, "Yeah." He says, "And you did your duty." I said, "Yes." And he said, "Did you get an honorable discharge?" I said, "I did." He goes, "Then," he says, we all have a part to play, whether you're on the ground fighting combat or like you did in the White House doing. We all had a job to do, and we did our job, and you should be proud of that. And it takes all those pieces to make it all work. So you were one part of it, I was one part of it, but we made it work. And you served your country just as much as I served our country, and you should be proud of that." And, I took that to heart. Ever since that moment, I have been. I did my job. And part of why I did it was because I believed in the freedoms that our country provided to me and everyone else. And it was particularly important to me also, I think, because, as I shared many times, my dad, I'm half Hungarian. He escaped from Hungary in the 50s, from the Soviets. It was part of the first uprising. And he managed to get to Austria, and then England, and then to the United States. Became a citizen, met my mom. I was born here, of course. But he escaped a totalitarian government who was, ruling everybody's lives, frankly. And he didn't want to be a part of that. And he wanted something better for his life and for his family and future generations. That was very important to him. In fact, frankly, he risked his life for it, to escape that, to get away from that. I served in the military to protect that. Many people have fought and died for the freedoms that we do have as a country, as individuals. And again, I say I'm saddened by the fact that some people are not proud of our country and not proud of the fact that we have the freedoms we have, and thinking that we're this is a bad country or an evil country or whatever, any of those things. Look, I'm not going to sit here and say it's perfect. It's not. Gosh, when you mix people, I know some people hate to hear this, but I think Jesus said it pretty well when he said, those without sin, cast the first stone. Show me a perfect person. I'll show you somebody who's, well, they're not. They're lying, right? Or they're misleading. Or they're not here anymore. They're dead, right? My point is, none of us are perfect. None of us have ever been. There's good people and there's bad people, but no one's perfect. And because our country is made up of people and our leaders happen to be people, they're not perfect either. So this is not, by any means or any stretch of the imagination, a perfect country. But like I said in one of the founding documents, it said in the effort to found a more perfect union. In other words, a better version of what had been around government-wise before. Why is this all so important? I could have talked about this before Independence Day, but it was something I was contemplating myself about it. And I wanted to, during this time of the year of our nation's birthday, like I said, all that, I find it so sad and frustrating that there's those out there that don't recognize that the freedoms that we have are unprecedented in history. Look, I wish we had more freedom than we have today. I'm pretty much, I've shared this so many times. I'm a person that's kind of a live and let live. I know I've stated sometimes I'm a libertarian, I guess, at heart. But at the same time, I'm not in agreement with what some of the more extreme members of the Libertarian Party espouse. I mean, there have to be some limits. I get that. I mean, for example, there can't be any no traffic laws, for example. You would have chaos. I mean, I've driven in Rome, Italy, and it's one of the most stressful experiences of my life because there are a few rules, and those that there are, it seems that most of the drivers don't follow them. And if you've ever had that kind of experience, and I know there's some other countries like that, when you're talking about driving and it's basically just total chaos, nobody follows any of the traffic rules, it's very stressful. You just don't know what's going to happen. And that's not a good way to live either. So I'm not condoning chaos. But what I am condoning is a level of individual freedoms that we haven't seen even in our country for a long time because, well, governments, like they naturally do, tend to try to grab and accumulate power over time. Thomas Jefferson talked about that a lot. My point is this. The freedoms that we have are unprecedented. What we can do with our lives in this country, even still today, is far more than what someone can do in just about any other country of the world, even today. There's so much more repression, regression, the thumb on you, so to speak. So what you can do is limited or is extremely limiting at best. And why somebody would want to go to those kinds of systems, and whatever you want to call them. There's socialism, there's communism, there's Marxism, there's fascism, there's all types of different government types. We used to have monarchies and things like that, right? Dictatorships. All of those types of governments involve large, powerful, overreaching governments that basically control the people to a great degree. Why someone would think that a large or powerful government is a good thing, well, frankly, is completely beyond me. I can't even fathom it, why anyone would think that government should do this or government should do that or government should do more. What that tells me is this is a person that lacks understanding, maybe, or completely just doesn't know anything about history at all, or the history of government, at all, any society throughout history, right? Or perhaps it's somebody that thinks that, well, if they get over on somebody else, maybe it'll be better for them. So the elites, You take any of those types of government entities, everything, like I said, from a monarchy to a dictatorship to a socialism, Marxism, fascism, any of those government types, it doesn't matter. But when you have a powerful government, you have a certain number of elites that are kind of running the show, so to speak. Do they benefit with those types of government situations? The answer is absolutely. Tremendously, in fact. Significantly so. Look, being an elite in one of those, any of those types of governments, it really doesn't matter, does it? Is a great thing. So I understand why the leaders that encourage this type of thing, that want larger government, bigger government, more involved, taking over more control, more power, all that. I understand why they want it. If it comes to pass, if it happens, they're going to benefit, aren't they? So it's completely understandable why the elites, the people in charge, or think they're going to be in charge, let's say, will push for this, pursue this, will encourage this, will mislead, will do what many times, oftentimes, most anything they need to do to try to make it happen. What I don't understand are the folks who are not connected, who are not in the elites, who will not be a part of leadership or the, connected class, who still advocate for the government doing this or government doing more. Because if that does happen, they're going to be hurting just as bad as the rest of us that don't want big government. They're going to pay the price along with the rest of us. So again, I have to feel like that's a person that's either misled or just misunderstands or has no sense of any history of mankind or government for that matter. Again, why would you want an imperfect person or government entity, which is imperfect because it's ran by people who are all imperfect, to be making decisions that impact your life? The only exceptions should be certain things that are just absolutely necessary that individuals can't do. One example is like general defense of the country, which what makes it infuriating when governments choose not to defend our country. For example, allowing things like illegal immigration. Hey, I'm the son of I'm a first generation of a legal immigrant. I mean, just knowing that should tell you where I stand. Most legal immigrants in first generation are very, very much against illegal immigration. I mean, for starters, my dad had to go through the process to become a citizen, and by the way, became very proud of that. Why shouldn't anyone else have to do that? Stay tuned in the next segment. I'm going to talk more about these freedoms and how it affects you and your money, so don't miss it.
For more information on Your Personal Bank, feel free to contact Ference at yourpersonalbank.com. Back to the Your Personal Bank Show with Ference Toth.
Welcome to the Your Personal Bank Show. Today we're talking about, the freedoms that we have as a country, as individuals. Many of us have celebrated or just recently celebrated 4th of July, Independence Day. Really, which, is sort of the birth date of our country and celebrates the freedoms that we have. And what saddens me is there's many people today who don't feel positive, we'll put it that way, about the 4th of July or our country or anything for that matter. In fact, they have many times often very negative feelings and associations to it. Now, look, I understand. In our history, there's been some times that were not so good. There's been different peoples, different races, and different things that were treated not so well, okay? But if you look back in history, I'm a big history buff. I love history. That's what I listen to and watch and search just for fun. And if you look at the kind of the course of human history, I mean, you go back, like say Rome. Let's say, for example, slavery, for example, was a common practice. Okay, it was accepted. It was normal, and it wasn't just one particular race or another. There were just slaves of anyone who was conquered could become a slave. All right, it was just the norm. And it was that way for the longest time in human history. And that's, bad stuff, right? People not treating others well. Okay, that's gone on throughout our history, human history, sadly, throughout most of it. And the fact that those kinds of things were actually moved away from, outlawed, banned even. By the way, it hasn't been completely banned. There's still slavery in our world even today. I mean, open your eyes. There's parts of the world that people are in bondage, okay? So it's sad that it existed. It's sad that it happened. But it's also worth celebrating, frankly, that we've moved forward. We've improved. We've increased the amount of freedoms over time. Our country has actually moved, in general, in a better direction. I mean, a great example is women didn't have the right to vote until in the early 1900s. That's ridiculous, in my opinion. But if you look back in history, that's our perspective today. Women obviously are more than capable of making a decision just like a man can, okay? They're many times better than the guys are, okay? But that's kind of a common thought today. It wasn't that way. Women weren't treated the same throughout history. And, if you've paid any attention to history, you know that women were often, for much of human history, not much more than almost owned. You know what I'm saying? Owned like cattle or whatever. In fact, there's still parts of the world today that value women far less than men. Okay? So it still exists. And the fact that we've moved forward on those kinds of things is a good thing. And if there are things where someone or somebody or some group is being treated worse than another, well, that should be discouraged universally. Absolutely. People should be against that. I'm going to say something that's not politically correct right now, but probably the most looked down upon group today happen to be male white men. Okay? So anyone who's not a white male should be looking down upon people looking down upon that group, right? We're all created by God. We all have special, we all should be treated the same, okay? Not better, not worse. How about the same? Just equal treatment. Can that be a goal? We haven't been able to accomplish that. It seems like we go from human history, we go from one extreme into the other extreme. Like we treat one group badly, so then we finally get away from that. Finally, start treating that group better, but we got to treat a different group badly now. Why? Why do we have to treat one certain group of people worse than the other? I don't understand that. Okay, I'm a mixed breed. Like I told you, I'm half Hungarian, so I've got some of that European heritage background. I understand that. Been there. So I got family there. And then, of course, my mom's side, German Irish, right? So I got some of that, right? But you see my point. Everyone should be, you know what? I like what Martin Luther King said. I look forward to the day my kids will be treated, by the content of their character, not the color of the skin. I don't care if the color of the skin of the person or what they look like, or they have a different language, they have a funny accent, or whatever. It's just bad. It's so immature. Maybe that's why it bothers me. I find it so distasteful. It's so immature. It's like the kids on the playground. You know what I'm talking about. The kid's wearing glasses all of a sudden. What do? They call him Four Eyes, and then they start picking on that kid. Why? Because he's different. He looks different. That's something grade school kids do. I thought most people were mature enough that once they got past that grade school age, taunting on the playground stuff because some kid looked different than you did or the group did. I mean, can't we be a little more mature than that? Stop picking on other people because they look different. If they do something different and they don't deserve your respect, that's one thing. But treat people with respect until they show you otherwise they don't deserve it by their actions, not by who they are or what they look like. That's what I would like to see happen. Why is this so important? I'm getting a little off track maybe a little bit, but I think it's so important because we're talking, this is a money show, right? By the way, financial freedom is one of those freedoms. Life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. It was in our declaration. And in that pursuit of happiness is the ability to grow wealth and build wealth and keep wealth and pass it on to the next generations and all those kind of things. And when those kinds of things are encroached upon, I should say, by government, for example, higher taxes, more regulations, all those kinds of things, that's challenging our pursuit of happiness, isn't it? It goes against our freedoms. So we have a number of things that we can do as individuals that we can choose to either encourage or discourage that type of activity and that type of behavior. Whether it's like on the playground picking on a kid because the kid looks different. And by the way, when people are adults and they treat somebody differently because they look different or act different, it's no different, no better. Or they want to support the government doing this or the government doing that, or, taking more control of our lives, right? Those are all encroachments on our freedoms. And so there's a lot of ways to combat that. One, you can choose not to be a part of it, right? Now, when it comes to taxes and government, some of those things, we don't have as much choices in some of those things. But we do have actions we can take that can either contribute or enhance that system or discourage or decrease the amount of involvement in that system. And one of them I'm going to talk about is taxes, for example, because too much taxes can really hurt people, okay, and really hurt their future and their freedom and their pursuit of happiness. Economic freedom is one of those things. So I'm really going to encourage you to stay tuned in the next segment because I'm going to talk more about economic freedoms. So don't miss it.
For more information on Your Personal Bank, feel free to contact Ference at yourpersonalbank.com. Back to the Your Personal Bank Show with Ference Toth.
Welcome back to the Your Personal Bank Show. We're talking about economic freedom, which is one of the freedoms that we were promised in the Declaration of Independence, which was one of the earliest founding documents of our country. It's life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. What is the pursuit of happiness? Some of the documents from the Federalist Papers and the Founding Fathers talk about pursuit of happiness, and some of it is about things like owning land, owning property, which is an economic thing. It's a financial thing. You see, if you own property, if you own land, if you are financially secure, you have assets, you're self-reliant, right? You're not reliant on others. That's a freedom. And that's a freedom that folks should aspire to. And I think most people probably do try to aspire to it. There's some that don't. And I don't know all the reasons behind that. Some people find, they get sidetracked or they get discouraged. They try to do this, try to do that. And, the life hit them in the head and, they just don't want to try that much anymore. And they'd rather see somebody else take care of them. It's a natural tendency. I understand it. I understand why, like the checks in the mail that were coming through these COVID relief things. I get why people enjoy getting a check. Okay, I understand that. Getting a check in the mail is cool. But when you start to become reliant on those kinds of things, dependent on those kind of things, or realize the impact how it's going to actually affect you down the road, the short-sightedness of it is frustrating. Because, government keeps printing checks. Remember, they don't own anything. They don't have any money. They own some stuff, but they don't have any money. The bottom line is they print it or they tax us, right? And if both of those things, basically the printing in particularly, causes inflation, causes the cost of things to go up. I mean, look at gas. Look at food today. Look at real estate. All those are things. Now, there's many other reasons behind it, okay? Not just inflation or printing, but certainly that's a big cause. So if you get a check, that's all well and good. That's great. But if it's going to cause you to pay more overall in the long run for many years, perhaps, oftentimes, is it really worth it? Is it something you want to support and encourage? Or do you want to discourage it? And some of the ways we can discourage it is how you vote. Look, I'm a fiscal conservative, have been for decades. I was frustrated with Bush Jr. about spending too much money. Okay? I've been frustrated for a long time. Finally, starting to get some other people because of the incredible level of spending that we're seeing. Finally hearing other people talk about it too and being concerned. Thankfully, my only concern is, and hope is, it's not too late. In other words, are we going to avoid a crisis type of situation that we saw like in the 70s where we had 21% interest rates, mortgages, interest rates going out off the deep end, going crazy. Look, if we get really high interest rates, dividends will be higher, personal bank dividends will be better. Hey, a lot of the products I deal with will be paying tremendous rates of return probably. Historically, they have double-digit dividends. I mean, that's what we saw back then, okay? That's what happened. And likely would happen again if we got into a crisis situation. Would it benefit me personally in what I recommend to people and as an inflation fighter and all that? Yes. Do I want to see that happen to our country and to the people and to everyone? Absolutely not. But one of the most frustrating things and one of the things I see taking away from our freedoms and encroaching upon our freedom, and what I mean is our ability to earn money, grow money, pass it on to the next generation, is you have a Federal Reserve that's out of control, in my opinion. And I'm saying that as a board member of a bank proposed to start a bank. We have a Federal Reserve that has for over a decade held interest rates to some of the lowest levels we've ever seen in the history of our country and kept them there artificially for an extended period of time, far longer than most people thought they would and far longer than I think they should have, which is creating another bubble. But on top of that, they're printing more on top of it. The analogy when we saw the latest news with the Federal Reserve about projecting that inflation is going to go up much higher this year in 2021 than they thought originally. And then on top of that, the next statement was, but we're going to keep buying bonds and others, quote unquote, print more money. Folks, that's like what they're saying is, look, this is a fire that's starting to grow out of control. We got a bonfire and it's starting to get out of control. So what's our response? Well, we're going to just throw gas on it. Geez, that's going to work out real well, right? Stay tuned in the next segment. I'm going to talk about what some of the things we can do to protect our freedoms, enhance our freedoms, particularly on the economic side of things. So stay tuned.
For more information on Your Personal Bank, feel free to contact Ference at yourpersonalbank.com. Back to the Your Personal Bank Show with Ference Toth.
Welcome back to Your Personal Bank Show. We're wrapping this up, and today we're really talking about economic freedoms. We've had the Independence Day either celebrating or did recently. And again, the freedoms that we have as individuals, as a country, are unprecedented in history, and that's just a fact. And anyone who feels like that our country is a bad country or we should feel guilty, or I just vehemently disagree. Yes, mistakes were made. Yes, we're not perfect. There was some really bad stuff that happened throughout history, but at the same time, in general, for the most part, we've moved forward in offering more freedoms to people. I mean, for example, women could vote. That didn't start that way. There's a lot of things that have happened that have given more freedom to people than ever before in history. So we should be proud of that. And where there are still inconsistencies or whatever, we should address it and make things better. Treat everybody equal. That's what I say. Everybody matters. Everyone should be treated equally. And it's frustrating when people who are trying to divide us, who try to make things difficult or bad, and the reason they're doing it for a reason, folks. They're doing it because it's either a power or money thing. In most cases, They gain more power, they gain more money, or both. And by dividing and conquering, so to speak, if they didn't get those benefits, they wouldn't do it, would they? So, we need to wake up a little bit as individuals, as a country, as a people, and realize when people are, trying to do things to hurt other people, but it benefits them. That's not the kind of person you want to listen to and follow or encourage. In fact, we should discourage that. And that would encourage more freedom for everybody and treating everybody equally and being fair. Look, nothing's going to be perfect because we're human beings, but we can certainly strive for that. Okay, that's the thing. And what I would also encourage people to do is stop supporting the system. Look, if you have a politician, if you're going to vote, look at who you're voting for. And if they're spending money like a drunken sailor, can we stop voting those people in? Look, they may bring in a bunch of money to your district. Fine, whatever. And that's to your benefit. Maybe it's to your benefit, or you think it's to your benefit of your city or your town or your state or whatever. But it hurts other people. And we are one country. So why not encourage people who are going to do something better? Instead of you know what I'm sick of? I'm sick of partisans. I want to see leaders. I didn't support our Senator Sinema. I didn't think she was a person who I didn't agree with a lot of her policies. How's that? Simple as that. I've been pleasantly surprised. And this whole, when I saw that she's more fiscally conservative than most Democrats, I was pleased to see that. And then when I saw, what I'm seeing here recently, her and Manchin, Senator Manchin from West Virginia, standing up against the Senate filibuster, which has been in place basically since the beginning of the Senate. And as the founding fathers, how our country was founded, the Senate is supposed to be a deliberative body. It's supposed to have a majority, not just an equal majority, an overwhelming majority agree on whatever policies, because as the founders stated, it's pretty simple. They said the House was for the passions of the day, and the Senate was designed to be a more deliberative body. So you had to have a supermajority to make things happen, which I think was wise. It's wise. For 51% to cram down the throat 49% policies is not good. That's very divisive. I hate this divisive partisan politics stuff. And I understand politics is always going to be around. It's not something we get around. But when it becomes divisive like this, and one side manages to get just a slight majority over the other, and they want to cram a bunch of stuff down the other side's throat that they don't agree with, it's not right. It's just not right. And yes, it might benefit them, and they may get more money, and they may get more power for a while, but it's going to hurt everybody in the long run. So why support those kind of things? So vote accordingly. How about encouraging people who are fiscally responsible? How about some fiscal responsibility? I'll give you one better. How about some fiduciary responsibility fiscally? Our representatives should be fiscally fiduciary responsible. Look, if they waste money and it becomes, they should be punished personally for that. I think that's my opinion. They should be good stewards of our money. It's not theirs. They have none. Again, the government has to print it or tax us to get it. So to waste it is just criminal, in my opinion. So support people that won't do that. And if they do, vote them out. This whole thing about somebody getting in there for a lifetime, gosh, I wish we had term limits. That was a blind spot, I think, with the founders. They just couldn't imagine. If you read this, they just couldn't imagine that somebody would actually want to be a politician and would want to be a career politician. It was so against their thing. It was a chore. It was a responsibility to serve, and you only did it because of duty and honor. And it wasn't something that was preferential at all, by any means. It was looked down upon. They just couldn't imagine somebody wanting to be in Washington for their whole career. The fact that we have people like that if somebody's been there too long, we should just vote them out and just to get fresh blood and fresh ideas. I mean, businesses do it all the time. They don't keep the same CEO most of the time for, decades. There's a reason behind that. Their leadership is turned over after a period of time. Because they get stale, they get old, they get entrenched. The old ideas, not so much age, it's old ideas. They get entrenched. They get the special interest groups buy them, control them. They get too comfortable. Look, if they're an incumbent, we probably should just vote them out and maybe try to get somebody else in there. Because, gosh, let's say, are they going to do a worse job than what we already have? I mean, Congress's approval rating is what? Around less than 20%. Why are we voting these people in? I can't fathom that. But the things we can do personally is why buy into the government retirement system? And what do I mean by that? And I know this goes against the grain with a lot of people think, but the IRAs and 401ks and all that stuff, for example, people contribute to. I call it a government retirement system, or their system of retirement, because a traditional IRA or 401k, if most of us know, you defer the taxes now. So you get a tax deferral now. That's the carrot. Okay, I get it. Everybody wants a tax deduction. Everybody wants to pay less taxes if they can legally. But then there's a stick. And the stick is when you take the money out some point down the road in retirement, you're going to pay the taxes on it. Now, why is that so important? Well, first of all, do you know what that tax rate's going to be? Have they guaranteed a rate for you for the future? And the answer is no. Look, if you trust Congress to do the right thing and take care of you, I guess you want to contribute to IRAs and 401ks as much as you can. But if you don't necessarily trust them so much and you don't know what they're going to do, and they haven't given you any guarantees whatsoever, they can tax you at any rate they want to down the road. And could that rate be higher than what it is now, particularly the way they've been spending money? Well, for the last several decades, much less the past year, has been ridiculous, right? They're going to have to do something to curb the spending to pay just to pay the interest on the debt is going to cost more. They're going to have to raise taxes, is what many economists say. Okay? So if you trust Congress to take care of you, okay, fine, contribute to the system. Now, there's a caveat. I mean, I understand people are contributing to 401ks because the government, their company, does a match. So a lot of people refer to it as free money. Let me give you a little hint. It's not free money, folks. It's another carrot and then stick. What do I mean by that? Well, they're saying, look, we'll contribute it. If you contribute to your 401k, we'll match it up to a certain point, right? Well, from a company standpoint, isn't that just another contribution to you, the employee, or in essence, compensation? In other words, if a company added, a couple $1,000s, let's say, to your 401k, would it be any difference to the company if they paid you an extra couple grand that year? From a tax deduction standpoint for the company, no, it makes zero difference. So why should they care? Now, I know some of these bigger companies have institutional entrenchment and stuff like that. You don't have the option of opting out, but there's a lot of people that work for smaller companies or even mom and pops and things like that, and they want these 401ks with the matches, and I don't understand why. Because they think they're getting something for nothing, but the reality is you're not getting anything for free. In other words, if a company's willing to add another couple grand a year or whatever that amount is to your 401k in a match, it means they're willing to pay you that extra amount, aren't they? Why not instead just ask the company to give you a raise? Now, a lot of people say, well, I'll have to pay tax on that. Well, of course you will. But here's the thing you need to understand. When you earn money, you're going to pay tax on it you're going to pay tax on it, period. Either now or later. Are you going to pay it now at a current rate that you know what it is, and one of the lowest rates in history, by the way, or are you going to pay it down the road at some unknown future rate? Oh, by the way, as the money grows, which over time, ideally, that's what happens, right? You put money in an IRA or 401k and it grows, and now you take it out and you probably got a whole lot more, don't you? And guess what? You get to get taxed on all of it, don't you? Including the gains. Who typically wins in those kind of situations? You or the IRS? See, I know it goes against the grain of what most people think because they just kind of blindly go along with what everybody else does. But we all remember those days when mom said, well, you said to your parents, hey, can I go out to do this? And your parents said no. And you said, well, all my friends are going to do it. And what do your parents say? I don't care what all your friends do. You're our kid, and you're not going to do it because we said so, right? We all remember that. I'd say most of us do. How's that? Well, just because everybody contributes to a 401k or an IRA, should you? See, that's not a good reason to do it. In other words, should you analyze it, look at it, and consider the options? What about funding a personal bank policy that's tax-free? Yeah, you pay the tax on what you earn, but then it grows tax-free for the rest of your life. What about that for an option? What about looking at things a little differently because, well, maybe what you've been doing or what you plan to do may not work out so well in the future. Look, if you do what 95% of the people do, you're going to get what 95% of people get. And do you understand what the average American receives in retirement, the income and all those things, those numbers? Many of them are scary. They're not good. All right? And if you're putting your money in a government-created system like the tax deferral offered by IRAs and 401ks, you're going to have to follow the rules that the government later puts on you. Again, do you trust Congress? Are they going to take care of you? Are they going to make sure you get a fair deal? See, I don't know. Personally, I'm suspect. And I think there's a lot of reasons to be suspect. I'll give you a quick example. When they first instituted the income tax, our country was promised that it would never go above 1%. Well, a year late, it only took a year to lie about that. So there's so much history of these kinds of things. Do you want to buy into the government retirement system or do you want to do something different, take control of your money? And that's really what your personal bank is all about. Being self-sufficient and taking control of your money and gaining positive arbitrage and reducing your taxes and reducing market risk. But again, most importantly, taking back control, putting you back in charge, who I think is the most important person to make decisions for your money. So as always, stay tuned to the Your Personal Bank show and contact me at yourpersonalbank.com for more information.
For more information on Your Personal Bank, feel free to contact Ference at yourpersonalbank.com. This show is designed to provide accurate and authoritative information. The presenter and guest on this program do not engage in legal, accounting, or tax advice. Professional advice regarding your situation should be sought if required. Products and riders may have limitations and may not be available in all states. Excessive unpaid loans may affect performance. Distributions may become taxable if not managed properly. Replacements may not be suitable for everyone. There may be charges when replacing coverage. Compare when considering a replacement. Dividend rates and baseline of credit rates may change. Contact yourpersonalbank.com for current rates.